drawers of the dresser and confronts the reality of her situation. It is true, there is not a single article of clothing that merits serious consideration for the upcoming journey, for, having been washed and ironed too frequently, all of her clothes are shiny and hideous in appearance. Having closed the drawers to the dresser, she shuts the empty suitcase and turns the key in the tiny lock. Leslie's frustrating telephone calls have led her to believe that it might well be weeks before her husband secures confirmation of their passage, for apparently winter is the most popular season in which to set sail for the region. This being the case, there is still time for her to broach the idea of a shopping expedition, but not quite yet, for betraying either enthusiasm or anxiety has never played any part in the detached manner in which she generally likes to conduct herself with her overly sensitive husband. Last Saturday night, there was no need for Leslie to burst into the Rose and Crown and embarrass her in front of everyone. He took her firmly by the arm and ordered her to be quiet, and then topped his performance by apologizing to the stupid landlord for her behavior. "I'm so sorry, but I'm afraid there's a little bit of a drink problem." But what she was saying was correct. Unless somebody woke up and took notice, this new Chancellor, Herr Hitler, would soon be tramping his muddy boots all over the map of Europe. It wasn't as though anybody in the pub disagreed with her, but at some point the landlord must have telephoned her husband, for suddenly Leslie made his entrance and began to coax her towards the door, all the while urging her, with an impatient sharpness, to please moderate her behaviour. When she started to shout, he barked at her in a firm whisper, telling her to either hold her tongue or keep it down. "You seem to be unaware of the ill nature of the emotions you arouse." She snatched her arm away and smartened up her dress with the palm of her hands. Then she reminded him that the only reason she'd come out for a quiet drink to begin with was to get away from his miserable presence, which was creating a foul atmosphere in their rooms. Once they were out on the pavement and safely beyond the hearing of those in the pub, Leslie stared at her with a strangely distracted look on his face, before raising his tone and beginning to affect a modulation that the poor man clearly hoped might come across as authoritative. "Why, Gwen, do you insist on leaving your good sense in glass after glass of wine? I'm afraid I simply don't understand you." All day Sunday she refused to talk to him, although he tried desperately to be pleasant. He asked her to please try and understand why he had been forced to remove her from the pub. "Dearest, it was a bad business. You were talking loudly to yourself and the patrons were simply ignoring you." But what rot! They were not ignoring her. They were asking if she was actually in sympathy with this Herr Hitler, which they must have known was a stupid question. "Of course I'm not," she said. "I speak French, not German. Why would I want to begin the process of acquiring another bloody language?" By late Monday afternoon, she had decided to allow things between herself and Leslie to thaw a little, for she could sense that her demure husband was troubled by a letter he had received in the morning's post. She tied on a headscarf and, without a trace of bitterness, asked if there was anything he would like her to pick up, as she intended to venture out to the shops. A newspaper, perhaps. Her husband smiled and shook his head. "No, thank you, Gwendolyn. I'll just listen to the evening news on the wireless." When she returned, he poured them both a glass of sherry, and then looked up and wondered if she might consider discontinuing her two-night exile on the sofa. Before she had time to frame a response, he pressed on and shared with her today's surprising revelation regarding an unexpected legacy from his late father, the Reverend Tilden Smith. He held the solicitor's embossed stationery in both hands, as though it were some kind of offering, and suggested that now that he appeared to be in funds, it might make sense to think about renting a nicer place, perhaps in Chelsea. Meanwhile, he wondered if she would be amenable to his treating them both to a voyage to the West Indies, for he understood how desperately she wished once again to see her birthplace. He paused, his brow wrinkled in perplexity, as though unsure how his suggestion might be received. But she said nothing, and so he felt obliged to continue. He informed her that he had some inkling of how much it might mean to her to reacquaint herself with her island. Was a West Indian sea voyage something she might consider? 2. The letter.